welcome to my channel. I'm Cami Thomas, and I'm talking about all things locks, all things life, all things love, all things travel. Um, let's get right into it. I have fine textured hair, and I want to give you a couple of reasons not to retwist often on fine textured locks. Now, when you have locks, everything comes from the base of your hair. Everything. That is your core, that is your it's your everything. If the base thins, your locks are done. They're done. So keeping the base as thick as possible is your goal. When you retwist, you are putting strain on your actual scalp. You're putting it at the base. You're putting a lot of pressure on it. Hopefully you can see my hair. So if I'm retwisting constantly, when you retwist, the base gets very thin, gets very small. That's fine, and then eventually it loosens, and then it goes into the lock. If you don't retwist often, the base will not. It'll just continue to kind of thicken up, and eventually, when you retwist it, more of it will go into the lock. Hopefully, that makes a little bit more sense. You want to keep the base as thick as humanly possible in order to get a lock that's as thick as humanly possible. My suggestion: don't retwist your hair often. Um, Spacing out your retwist will do wonders for helping out your hair. And it doesn't have to be a lot. If you're someone who's like, I have a corporate job and I really need to retwist my hair to keep it as neat as possible, that's great. So instead of maybe every 4 weeks, maybe you retwist every 6 weeks. Or if you're someone who already retwists every 6 weeks, move it to every 8 weeks. It's like just give an extra 2 weeks. That's how I kind of started my journey. The first 6 months of my locks, I retwisted once every month. Um, and I did that because I wanted to create the cylinder shape of my locks. But after that, I tried to let my hair not be retwisted as often. Maybe every 6 weeks I pushed to, because I wanted my locks to be as thick as possible. And especially when you have very fine textured hair, you don't have that much hair as it is. Like, we got to preserve every hair in our head. So all that twisting at the root and pulling is not great. It's going to remove hairs for us. We can't operate the way the thick hair girls do. I've seen some girls on YouTube. They retwisting once every 3 weeks, and their hair looks amazing. Nothing short of amazing. Like, fantastic. And I'm like, wow. I wish I could do that. I can't, because if I do, I won't have hair. Um, so you just have to always remember that sometimes when you're watching people on YouTube, you're like, oh wow, they're retwisting every 4 weeks, every 3 weeks. They may be able to do that because they may have a thicker hair texture, or more, like they have a denser hair texture. They have more hair. When you have fine textured hair, you kind of want to space that out, just a bit. You don't want to be doing 4 weeks. Even is a little bit pushing it. I would do minimum, like max, like 6 weeks. As I mentioned, having a thicker base will lead to thicker locks. If you're someone who's in the middle of your lock journey and you've gotten to like a year and you're looking at the locks and you're like, my lock itself is not very thick. I thought it was going to be thicker. I understand. I was there with you for a second there. I really thought my locks were going to be a lot thicker than they were, because I was like, oh yeah, like they're going to thicken up. They do thicken up if you let them sit and breathe during that starter lock phase. But if you keep retwisting and retwisting and retwisting, it's compacting the lock, so eventually it just gets tighter and tighter. And it doesn't have to do it to all of them. Some of my locks are thicker than others because the hair that's there is a little bit thicker. But the ones at the crown, a little bit thinner because the hair there is a bit thinner. So I really suggest just not retwisting often, but also only retwisting the roots. When you do retwist, only the roots. The rest of the lock will form. You don't need to be retwisting everything all the way down, because that just makes the lock smaller and smaller. And you want the locks, if you're watching this video, you want your locks to be as thick as possible. One of my favorite reasons not to retwist often is better moisture at my roots. Come with me. You just did your fresh retwist after months of not doing your hair. You retwisted it, you washed, you conditioned, hot oil for me, you retwist. It looks beautiful. 3, 4 days go by, your hair's scalp getting a little dry. I mean, you put a little oil on it, but you don't want to do too much. Why? Because you just retwisted. If I start spraying my water at my roots, which is usually how I like revamp my hair every day, I spray it with a bit of water, fluff it up, and then I call it a day. If I do that, the retwist is gone. It's gone. And my retwist already barely lasts. Guys, I retwisted my hair 2 weeks ago. It doesn't even look like I've retwisted in months. It looks like I haven't retwisted in months. And I retwisted 2 weeks ago. And to keep that retwist, I definitely don't moisturize as much because I'm not putting a ton of water on it. I'm not putting a ton of oil on it. I want to keep the retwist as long as possible. When I'm not, like when I'm in the middle of spaced out retwist like I am now, I can get all up in those roots. I'm wetting it every day. I'm underneath the shower like dun 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 dun. I'm feeling like the goddess that I am. Your hair just gets better moisturized when you're not like trying to hold on to a style. When you're holding on to a style, you can't be doing all that. And I understand why, because I'm trying to keep the style, especially when you're going months and months without it. So keep that in mind when you're trying to space out those retwists. Your retwist will be a lot nicer if you just don't put a ton of water on it, but your hair will be drier. So I think better moisture is the key for the retwisting. Another reason not to retwist, guys, if you want to do a little like laziness with the locks, retwisting is a lot of work. I don't even know how many locks I have, but anytime I retwist my hair, I feel like it's a full-time job. Full-time job. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I gotta retwist it at the root. I'm twisting. Like, it takes over an hour. And my arms are just tired. Like, you're just sitting here like, and then I think to myself, like, should I just pay the $75 and go into the hairdresser? Like, should I have? Maybe it would have been better. Better for me. So I really suggest that you just space them out. Also, another reason is if you use product on your locks, which I do. I use the wrap and roll. I use like a foam wrap and roll at the roots of my locks when I retwist. I don't retwist often, but like when I do, I like to try to make it hold a little longer. As you see, that lasted really well. But if you're constantly retwisting with product, that's more and more product going into your hair. If you're only retwisting, a handful of times a year, that's less product going into your hair. And we all know if you have locks, less product is always better, or as natural products as you can. You don't want a ton of gunk in your locks. So not retwisting with product often is going to be really, really helpful, and just not retwisting often is going to be even more helpful. So I definitely suggest that you space out those retwists. I'm going to ask a question to you guys. How long do you wait in between your retwist? And anyone can give us some pointers for stretching out that retwist. My tip I'm going to leave here is that in between stretching my retwist, I do a lot of braid outs. In between stretching out the retwist, I'll wash it and braid it, and then let that sit for 3 days, and then I'll have curls. This is actually like this was last week with no upkeep, but it has like a slight wave left into it, and it makes my hair look thicker too. If you're someone who has fine hair and you want it to look a little bit like you have more hair, putting a little bit of waves, doing a little bounce to it makes it feel like you have a lot more hair than you might actually have. So I definitely suggest that if you're someone who's spacing out their retwists, braid outs, flexi rod sets might be some good styles to try and allow you to get volume, have a nice style, a neat style if that's your type of thing, that allows you to also, show off those locks. So guys, once again, in the comment section, let me know what are ways, one, how long do you wait in between retwists? And two, what are some styles that we can do in between our retwists to keep our hair and everything looking really nice? I would love to know because I'm always looking for new tips and tricks. Thank you guys. Please like this video and subscribe. And I'll see you in our next one.